Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Brian Crescenti. I'm the news editor of Polygon. And sitting to my left, your right, is someone you may recognize, Robert Kirkman. I think best known for Battle Pope.
Yeah, I think
if
you were to list everything, that would probably be on the top.
Now, obviously, creator of Walking Dead, a Walking Dead TV show. Now we're getting a new Walking Dead show. Outcast is both a comic and soon to be a TV show.
Hopefully we'll be doing a third Walking Dead show eventually, the Walking Dead New York of it all.
Nice.
I have high hopes.
I could spend 45 minutes, I think, going through everything you've created, so
great.
I won't. All right, so let's start. For those of you who maybe don't know, for those people who don't know your history, how did you first get into comic books?
Well, before I start talking, I am going to warn everybody that my voice is coming in and out. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I'll try to manage that as best as possible. I forgot your question. What was that?
How did you get started in comics? What drew you to comics?
Well, I mean, I read comics as a kid, and to me, I don't know, like watching movies is fun, watching TV is fun. Like at the end of the day, I'd rather be reading a comic. I think it's just a magical storytelling medium that I really enjoy, and I like to think that I'm kind of an idiot, and so I didn't really have any like real skills, and I didn't go to college or anything. But I knew a lot about comics. I had basically like wasted my life, and so I only had like one career path left. And so, you know, right out of high school, I had a couple of crappy jobs, and I realized, you know, from working at a comic shop, I realized, you know, it would be really easy to actually like publish a little comic and actually get it distributed because there's only one major distributor that goes to all the stores in the United States and worldwide. You know, a lot of, they have like, I'm getting a little bit too inside baseball at this point.
No, I think we like that.
But yeah, there's like one distributor you talk to and they get your comic in all kinds of places.
Right.
And so I ended up doing Battle Pope, which still is my most popular creation.
Someone likes it.
That was God. What's up? It's not. So, you know, I just ended up starting this little publishing company and running it out of my house in Kentucky. And, you know, I guess I started doing comics. That's how I got into comics.
So first, I've got to ask, when you were young reading comics, what sort of comics did you like? What were your favorites?
Well, it's Marvel superheroes were the big thing for me, but that was really just because I lived in a small town in Kentucky and I got all my comics from Walmart. And the only comics they had were Marvel superheroes. So at the end of the toy section, there was this little comic rack, and I would buy all that stuff. And then later on in high school, I was going to comic shops and stuff, and so I would read some DC stuff. But it wasn't until later that I started getting into more independent comics and stuff like that. And I actually read comics for like 2 or 3 years before Image started. And when Image Comics started, it was all of the creators that were doing all the stuff I was reading at Marvel that went over there. And so I stopped reading all the Marvel books and followed those guys over. And I think that kind of, you know, being a big fan of comics at that time made me like a little bit more aware of, you know, the creators' rights issues that were going on in comics. Right. And the fact that, you know, all of these popular creators that I looked up to were being entrepreneurs and doing their own thing instead of you know, continuing to work at the big companies. And so I think that because I was, you know, keenly aware of that situation at a young age, it kind of put me on the path of, you know, always wanting to do my own thing.
So how did you transition from doing Battle Pope to eventually working on things like The Walking Dead?
Well, being a fan of Image Comics that I was, I kind of weaseled my way into getting Erik Larsen's phone number. He's one of the founding members of Image Comics, and he does a thing called Savage Dragon. I knew a guy who was running a website that was doing interviews for people, and the website never got off the ground. But I found out that he had scored an interview with Erik Larsen, and so I just went to him and I was like, I'm going to do that interview. And I had never interviewed anyone before, but I was like, I've read that comic, I can talk to that guy. And so I got a little tape recorder and I called that guy on the phone, and I did like a 2.5-hour interview with Erik Larsen. And I wish I still had that tape because I'm sure it's super embarrassing. But from that, I had his phone number, and I would literally mark on a calendar, like, talk to him on this Wednesday. It won't be weird if I call him again after this date. And I would just call him and be like, hey, it's that guy that interviewed you. What's going on? How you doing? You know, because we had a good chat during the interview. And after the interview was over, he was like, wow, I've never been interviewed by somebody that like knew so much about my comic. And so we kind of hit it off. And it was through being buddies with that guy that I ended up being able to get a leg up in pitching books to Image, because what would happen was I would pitch a book to Image, and you know, the publisher at Image at the time, Jim Valentino, would rightly be like, this comic ain't so great. And then I would call Eric Larson and be like, I think this comic's pretty good. And he'd go, I like you. We'll publish that. So that only happened a couple of times. But if people tell you that nepotism doesn't help you get a foot in the door in any industry, they're wrong. Like, do whatever you can to make friends with people. You know, hard work is not the only thing that'll help you out. Definitely, you know, try to score as many favors as you can from people. And good luck trying to get my phone number.
Lots of good advice.
Yes.
And I'm going to be sending you my pitches in about like a month, I think.
Great.
You, I think...
You can call me anytime because I'll forget the last time we talked.
You early on started, it sounds like, took on the idea of creator activism. I just want to hear what your thoughts are. How would you define that? What does that mean to you?
I think it's just like doing the things, I mean, there's a lot to that, you know? And I certainly sometimes get the rap of like, people will say, well, people want to do what they want to do, so like, why would you say don't do stuff at Marvel and DC? Like, what if they want to do stuff at Marvel and DC? And, you know, I'm like, you know, after a certain point, it's just kind of dumb to do that, you know? Because it's not in your best interest. So I would say at the core, all I'm saying is, you know, creators should always try to keep their own best interests in heart, because this is a tough gig. I'm like 2 days away from not being popular, you know?
Right.
And when your career's on a downturn, it's very hard to like turn that around. And so like writing well and doing your jobs well, be it, you know, if you're working in video games or comics or TV or whatever, is an essential part of having a career, but recognizing the opportunities that come along, because they're always happening, and knowing like when to jump and when to pivot and when to change gears is, you know, it's an essential part of making it. And, you know, no matter how popular or successful you are, I always try to keep in mind that, you know, there have been many people that have been way more popular than I'll ever be that couldn't get arrested, you know?
Right.
So, you know, you have to be aware that unrelenting zombie-like force is chasing your career at all times, and do whatever you can to combat that. So, I don't know, I take that kind of stuff very seriously.
So was that why Skybound came about, or did Skybound come about and then you started kind of formalizing these ideas?
I mean, Skybound came about like in the comic space. You know, the idea behind Skybound was always, you know, creators need a leg up. I have an apparatus built around The Walking Dead that is a better avenue to merchandising and licensing and things like that. And there are these guys out here that are extremely talented, but don't really have the opportunities that I have. And so being able to take a comic, you know, like Manifest Destiny, or, you know, all the other books that we do, and, you know, like there's Manifest Destiny t-shirts, and there are other comics that haven't been around as long that have no merchandise, or that have been around longer that have no merchandising. And that's something that, you know, I think we bring to things. And so it is, to a certain extent, you know, helping people and trying to, I try to think of Skybound as the company that I really would have liked to have in my early days. You know, like when I was doing Battle Pope, if future me could have called me and been like, how about trying this, this, and this? Let's do that. Like, I would have been thrilled. So that's kind of my goal there.
Do you think, I think in a lot of ways when people who are fans of comics or TVs or movies or games think about this, they think about transmedia. And transmedia is sort of a soul-sucking word. You know, it sounds like it's going to kill a property.
The words like brand and IP.
Right.
And,
so how is this different?
Profits.
Profits.
Oof.
How is this different than Transmedia? Because it sounds, in some ways, it sounds like you're doing Transmedia.
Well, I think that there's this soulless corporate idea of Transmedia, but then there's also like an organic, like almost accidental Transmedia, which I think is a little bit truer. I think that, you know, when I set out to do The Walking Dead, I just wanted to do a really cool comic. And then when it came time to do the show, there were a lot of opportunities where they were like, you know, hey, we'd love to do this show. And then I would say, well, that's cool. I've got this comic. I already have done some T-shirts and some statues, and you want to option this to possibly make it into a show, but you're going to give me a very small amount of money to do that. And if I give those rights away for that small amount of money, I can't make the small amount of money I make off of a statue. Because at the time, I could do a Walking Dead statue. The average option price for a TV show is like $5,000, you know?
Right.
They'll give you like $5,000, and then they'll like figure out if they're gonna make the TV show, and then if they actually make it, you get a bigger check. But that could be 2 or 3 years of nothing happening. And so, you know, those merchandising rights were actually somewhat valuable. I apologize if I'm getting a little bit too inside baseball, but it was holding those rights was more valuable than actually taking those deals, you know? And so it kind of, you know, got to a point where, you know, I was defending this, you know, thing,
right.
You know, The Walking Dead, that was very important to me. But by defending that, it gave me the opportunity to do the stuff I'm doing now.
So do you think, you've got, obviously, The Walking Dead, super popular. Outcast is soon to be, it sounds like, a TV show. Both of those are properties that you've created. Outcast was, you're writing Outcast.
Right.
How do people who maybe look at this who are creators, how will they know that this isn't just you're awesome and your stuff gets turned into great stuff, and it's, you know, that they can maybe have the same chances that you have?
Well, I mean, because I'm an idiot. But, you know, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, I'm having trouble answering that question.
Gotcha.
Great. But no, I mean, I think that, you know, valuing yourself and valuing what you're doing more than a lot of people do. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the things we did with The Walking Dead is we waited until the right deal came along.
Right.
You know, and you know, not doing that, you know, can lead to you getting a bad deal. I mean, Marvel Comics is a really good example of that. If they had waited 2 years before they did that X-Men deal, they would be in a much better position right now. But because they were struggling and they were in bankruptcy, they did that X-Men deal where, you know, they don't really control a lot of it. They don't really get to do a lot of stuff with the X-Men. But, you know, the Spider-Man deal is much better. And then they did their own movies, and now they're Marvel and they're doing all this crazy movie stuff. But they just don't have the access to the X-Men, you know, because they gave that to Fox.
Right. Do you think, sort of changing the topic just a little bit, you have, as a company, it's not just that you're doing comics and you're accepting new people and trying to support them, but you have, obviously, the TV shows. You've got Air, which is, I think, close to finished or is in development.
No, it's completely done.
Oh, it's
we'll
completely
be announcing a release date very soon.
And you've got...
It's done and it's awesome.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Is it awesome? It is awesome.
Saw it a long time ago. It's fantastic.
Can I see it later?
Maybe. Maybe. No, the coolest thing about doing like movies and TV and stuff is like it gets done and then you watch it and you're like, this isn't gonna be out for like a year. Totally got to see that.
So you have the movie.
Like the finale of Walking Dead season 5, I watched that in November.
Oh, come on. I actually meant to start this whole thing out by asking you what's gonna happen tomorrow. And then we can all like tweet about how awesome we all are, because we know, but you're not gonna tell us, are you? No. You probably don't remember.
Was the one that Rick dies, was that last week or is that next week? I tell you, I do that joke at every one of these. It's either Rick or Daryl or somebody, and it always gets a laugh. But I feel like there's always at least like 5 or 6 people in the audience that have heard some other talk that I've done where I've made that joke that are like, why is he doing that again?
One of these days
you're gonna
be accidentally right, and you're gonna break all these hearts.
I'm better than that.
So so you've got the movies, or a movie, you've got the TV shows, video games. Oh, how do you make that decision? You have a property come in. How do you decide, or how do you work with the creator to decide, okay, which direction should it take, other than comics?
Well, I mean, you know, I've been fortunate enough with Skybound to have this amazing team. I mean, things like Super Fight, in particular our tabletop game, which is fantastic. You guys should all look at it. It's there's a website. I don't know what it's called. It's great. But you know, that was created by this guy Darren Ross. Like, I literally had like nothing to do with the origins of Super Fight. He had made it on Kickstarter and was doing this game, and you know, was having a lot of success, but he was having trouble filling orders, and he wasn't really able to like meet the demand of this amazing thing that he had done. And so we ended up talking about doing like a Walking Dead expansion pack or some kind of thing like that. And through those discussions, we were like, you know, we've got a warehouse and we have a website and we produce this and we do that. And you know, what if you like became a part of Skybound, like we could actually, you know, help you expand. And I think it's because of the infrastructure that we've built around The Walking Dead that we're able to take something like Super Fight. Now we've got like a Super Fight show on YouTube where people play it live, and that's awesome. And you know, we do all these trade shows with Super Fight, and you know, we've really just, you know, expanded into all these different areas and really grown that business tremendously, just because it's a cool thing that, you know, Sean Kirkman, our director of business development, I believe that's his title, I don't know, you know, that he found. And so it's through this great team that we've assembled that these kind of opportunities arise. And so, you know, day to day, like I'm not, you know, going, hey, let's do this with Super Fight and let's do that. Like, you know, I have a great group of people around me that helps make those opportunities manageable.
All right, I want to talk to you about games because that's something I love.
Great.
Games. So you have.
We had a fun discussion about Destiny the other day.
Yes, you play Destiny. Okay, I'm gonna just for a second. We have to talk about Destiny. You've done it.
I did the Iron Banner. I got to level 5. I got this sweet scout rifle. It's totally.
Why?
I got Icebreaker the other day. Oh my God.
I don't want us to become a Destiny talk, but I have to ask one question. Why?
Regenerates ammo. Icebreaker. You can sit there and like snipe people all day long. It's crazy.
Why is that? Like in talking to you, we talked earlier this week. It sounds like that's your big game right now. You're playing the hell out of it.
Yeah, I try to only have one game at a time, and I'll give it like an hour and a half a week. You know.
So but why that one? What about it makes it the game you like?
Honestly, that one because my son like played a little bit of Halo. Like we have like Halo lying around the house, and when that one came out, I was like, oh, it's like a new Halo because it's made by the people that created Halo, and my son will be able to get in on the ground floor and like this because he's 8. So that was the main reason. I mean, it looked cool. I knew that it was going to be like a neat game, but really like the you know, the building the characters and doing all that kind of stuff is a lot of fun. Like having a character that like grows with you, and it gets a little frustrating when you get into the higher levels because it's like, oh God, I just need a new pair of boots. I'm just gonna play this game for like an hour to try and get a new pair of boots. And then an hour later you're like, I'm really playing this game to get boots? Is that normal? But it's fun.
So the games you have currently either in development that are out, you've got, I think when we were talking
I really
before,
wanted to devote at least 15 minutes to Destiny.
Oh.
I don't know why.
you should make a crossover, Destiny crossover.
I would be up for that.
Invincible?
You don't want Walking Dead people running around in robot suits?
So how many titles are in development? I know you can't talk about all of them, but how much stuff are you guys working on?
We have 12 active projects, but only 2 of them are public, I guess is what we've been saying. Okay. Which I guess is like saying, I have a girlfriend in Canada, but you can't meet her. So yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot of cool stuff, and you know, I don't know, are the 2 things that are public. I mean, we did The Walking Dead Assault, which was our first like iOS game. But we've been working with Telltale on the Walking Dead game, right? Called The Walking Dead, a Telltale game series, which I think people enjoy. It's a fantastic game. It's a game that you know, I should take no credit for, but I take all kinds of credit for it.
Do you have you kept up with that game?
Yeah, definitely.
How sad has it made you? Has it made you very sad?
It's weird for me because like I'm in like calls and story meetings and stuff. Hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna kill this person. You know, Kenny dies. Blah blah blah. I don't want to spoil things, but and yeah. So then when I play the game, I'm like, well, they did that well, you know.
So there's no moment. It's completely you're just viewing.
I have to say I recently played. I haven't gotten the second chapter of the Game of Thrones game yet, but I did play the first Game of Thrones game. And at the end of it, I was like, oh, what happened? Like, what's going on? And then I was like, oh, this is what it's like for people.
It's like, I think everybody's like, now you know.
I could have handled a little less sword ducking, but other than that, it was great.
So you have the Telltale Walking Dead. You've got Starbreeze is working on a Walking Dead game.
Yes.
And then Air, you just announced
Yes.
that you're doing something with Air.
We have 3 public projects. What did I say?
3. You said 2.
I'm wrong.
Maybe it's 4. If you want to tell us another one, we'll.
Now, it's really dangerous for me to talk about it because I really, sometimes I'm not aware of the things that we've talked about. And, a few projects are very close to being announced. So to me, I'm like, we've discussed an announcement plan and maybe I've read a press release. And so I'm like, yeah, that one's out yet. And then somebody will be like, or that one's been announced. And somebody will be like, no, it hasn't. Don't say that. And I'm like, ooh, okay.
So you, in both the Telltale game and in the Air game, they both sound like, well, Air at least sounds like it's going to be very narrative, very sort of story-driven. Starbreeze sounds very much like a traditional shooter. We don't know a lot about it. Actually, what can you tell us about that game?
I don't know.
I'll keep talking until someone in the audience says, stop.
I'm worried that no one would stop me. I can say that it will be Payday-esque because they're currently doing Payday.
Right.
But I'm told that it will be a bigger world than Payday currently encompasses. So they're going to be learning a lot of stuff from Payday that they're going to be incorporating into the Walking Dead game. And I've probably already said too much. But there will be announcements about that game very, very soon. One thing that I think is really cool that we're doing with the Telltale games and the Payday game or the Walking Dead game with Starbreeze and the Air game is that they're licensed games and licensed games are usually somewhat crappy, but thankfully ours aren't. But the key that I think is really important is that we're not doing hey, it's Daryl Dixon running around shooting zombies because you like Daryl Dixon, or oh, it's Rick Grimes doing this because you like Rick Grimes. We're telling our own stories and doing our own things almost as if they're original games. Right. So Air is a movie. It's co-written and directed by Christian Cantamesa. And it's about, Norman Reedus' character and Jaimin Hanzu's character and the world that they're in and all the different things that happen to them. The game takes place in the same world, doesn't feature the same characters, has its own story, has its own entry point, and Christian, who came from the video game world, is working directly on the game as well. And so instead of it being like a derivative experience where you kind of enjoyed a movie, so you're playing a game and it's not as good as the movie and there's some lame things about it, we're doing a thing that's its own experience that stands on its own as a cool game, as opposed to just being a licensing barnacle to this popular movie. Right. So, and that's the thing that we try to do with all of our things, try to come up with some way to, make it exist in its own right, as opposed to cashing in on the success of The Walking Dead or whatever we're doing.
So it's funny because I think we are at a time now where many games that are based on licensed properties can be good, which is so unusual compared to the history of gaming. I think licensed games in some way kind of brought down THQ. And there are other studios that have messed around with licensed games and they haven't been good. You guys have had a tremendous success rate so far, delivering games that are really good. Is it in part because of the idea of leaving some of that control to the creator, or is there something else involved in that?
I think a big part of it is that Telltale can call me and say, hey, what if we did this? What if we focused on Clementine? What if we did something cool like that? And instead of calling a corporate partner that's going to say, well, I have a sheet of paper that says this is popular, so you have to do this. Right. I can go, oh yeah, no, that's actually really cool, and that might tie into this, and that might tie into that, and because I understand every facet of the Walking Dead world, I know when you're breaking those parameters and when you're playing in them correctly, and I'm able to give Telltale the leeway and the freedom to do what it is that they do well, as opposed to trying to dictate to them what I think The Walking Dead should be, to a certain extent, if that makes sense. Right. So I think that's a big part of why, those games are way better than your average licensed game. But I think another very obvious thing about it is, with most licensed games, the company that's licensing it looks at it like a marketing tool and not a game. And so your release date is set in stone because the marketing for the game is supposed to be marketing for the thing, and the game itself is supposed to build brand awareness that's going to help the thing that you're trying to market. And so those release dates are set in stone. I mean, that's the simple answer right there. It's like, yeah, most licensing games have some kind of lackluster element to them because the licensee is like, you have to hit this date. Sorry, game's not good. Nobody cares.
Well, it's interesting, Air.
We'll just push things back and make sure it's good.
Right, and it sounds like Air. I talked to you all about this a few weeks ago. There's no. I mean, I'm sure you would love for those two to coincide, the movie and the game, but it sounds like you're not. You're not set on doing that. It just depends. What do you?
They probably won't be released in any. There'll be some distance between the movie and the game.
Do you think that, again, kind of getting back to that earlier question of whether it's just you, do you think that there are other creators who are as passionate and interested about their properties as you are when it comes to things that they're not directly involved in, like a game?
I think so. I mean, I don't think I'm special, but I don't know. I mean, I do care about all this stuff, and it excites me, you know? And I think that there are other people that, I think there's an infinite number of creators that are as passionate and excited about cool stuff like I am, but they just haven't had a Walking Dead show yet, and they haven't been able to like parlay that into the opportunities that I have. So, you know, I think that if this Power show is successful, I think you'll see Brian Bendis doing stuff like this, and you know, I think there are other creators out there that could do this, but you know, I'm just, I guess, first out of the gate. I'm the lucky one.
So Outcast. Let's talk about Outcast.
Sure.
I read some of the comics. Amazing, really good stuff.
They're okay.
Oh, come on. So how did that deal come about? It going to Cinemax?
That was a weird one. So when you're a comic book creator, you hang out at comic book conventions, and usually you'll hang out with people that you don't really see very often because you all live in different parts of the country. And you know, it'll be like, oh, what are you gonna do next? What are you gonna do next? Oh, I got this one thing I wanna do. There's this project I might do 10 years from now that I'm really excited about, blah, blah, blah. And so you kind of just, you know, talk about the projects that you're gonna do. And in between Walking Dead Season 1 and Walking Dead Season 2, I was hanging out with the head of Fox International, Sharon Tull Iguado. And they handle the international distribution on The Walking Dead, which had already been a pretty big international success for them after Season 1. And it was some event, and you know, we were hanging out, and she was just like, what are you gonna do next? And so I was like, well, I got this idea for this exorcism thing that I wanna do next. It's about this guy, Kyle Barnes, and he does this, and I kind of pitched her the rough idea for the story because it was the comic I was gonna do next. But I had no idea when I was going to get around to doing it because, you know, the Walking Dead show was going and it was all very busy. And at the event, she just goes, I'll buy that. Because Walking Dead was doing so well that, you know, Fox International was like, hey, let's get another show from this guy, you know? But I didn't know that. And so I found myself like selling a comic, you know, pretty early. Like.
So had any comic, none of the comics had come out?
No, I mean, that was like 2011.
Wow.
So you know, I had done outlines and I had done some plotting stuff, and I knew the core of the story, but you know, it had already been sold as a TV show, which is very weird. And then I moved to LA to work in the Walking Dead Season 2 writers' room, and I've been there ever since in the writers' room because I wasn't in LA for the first season. It was only 6 episodes. I came out for a couple weeks and worked in the room. But that was a new development. And so it started pushing everything back. And so my life was working in the room on Walking Dead, ignoring calls from Fox International, you know, trying to work on this Outcast comic to develop it into something that I could actually turn into a TV show. And so, you know, we've been working on it for a long time. And I was kind of like writing issues at the same time as developing the pilot and like writing the pilot. And so it's strange because with Walking Dead, I was at like issue 60 something. Right. When the TV show talks happened, and by the time the show was out, we were in the 70s as far as like issues go. And you know, we have Outcast issue 6 out now. And the writer's room is going right now. So on Monday, I'll be back in the writer's room on Outcast, and we're developing issues that I've written that haven't come out yet. And so
why do the comic? I mean, did you think since you had that?
Oh, how dare you? Why?
I mean, you have the deal. Why not just do a show?
Well, that would be, you'd be working under the assumption that you only do comics in order to get TV shows, which is not the way I see things. I actually prefer working in comics. That's, I think other people think TV's awesome and they watch more TV, and certainly on a numbers basis, more people watch television than watch comics, but comics are better. You all just haven't realized it yet. So no, I mean, I don't know, it's fun. I almost wish the TV show would have taken longer, but.
So now, okay.
That said, I love working in TV, and the pilot I think is really cool. I'm really proud of it, and I can't wait to see how the show comes out and everything. And luckily, timing-wise, we don't start shooting the first season until July, and by then we'll be done with the comics that encompass the first season. And we're moving at a good enough pace that I don't think the show, if it's successful and actually lasts past the first season, because you never know with these things.
Right.
The show will never catch up to the comic.
So you always
the
get a
other
little
thing,
ahead.
the other reason to do comics is, like I'm in a position in comics where I can tell the Outcast story. Like I know the beginning, middle, and end of Kyle Barnes' story. I know how many issues I want it to go. I know that it's going to take a while. And, I know that I can tell those stories because, comics are accepting of that kind of stuff. I have no idea how well Outcast is going to go. It doesn't excite me to do one season and cross my fingers and hope that I can complete my story. That process sucks. So
the show though will be it'll be like The Walking Dead in that it sort of follows the outlines of the comic, or is it going to be?
I mean, we're definitely adapting the comic, but like The Walking Dead, there will probably be characters that only appear in the show and characters that only appear in the comic, and various differences. Because I'm working on both, I don't want to write the same story twice, even if I am doing it at a relatively. It's almost worse because with Walking Dead, it's like, yeah, I wrote that 6 years ago. Let's change that. Or sometimes I really like that. Let's tell that story again. When you're doing it at the same time, like those differences help me and they keep me excited. So there will definitely be differences, but overall, Kyle Barnes will be Kyle Barnes in both versions, and there will be a lot of similarities. But I want people who've read the comic to watch the show and be excited and surprised. So there's definitely going to be a lot of twists and turns.
You just made me think of something. With the distance of the time lapse between The Walking Dead, the comic, and the TV show, do you at all view the TV show then as sort of a director's cut of the comic? Like, are you looking at it and saying, I should have done this thing when I did the comic?
In certain instances, sure, but I don't look at the show like that's the perfect version of The Walking Dead where I had time to think, Right. Like there's certainly some cool scenes where I'm like, yeah, that's way better. But it's not like I view the show as the final version, the version I got right. I like them both equally. It is, sometimes in the room, I'm like, this scene has to be exactly how it was in the comic. That's what the intent of the story was, and it'll have the right impact, and it'll be cool. And there are times where I'm like, that didn't work out so well in the comic, let's not do that. It's being able to, sometimes do this and sometimes do that. That's the fun of it.
So Skybound as a company isn't, I believe this is correct, isn't just a company that starts with comics. Like obviously Air
Right.
is starting as a movie. It seems though that right now, mostly it's starting with comics. Do you think that it's going to become a company that is as much producing movies first or games first as the original IP as it does comics?
It seems to be going. It seems to be going that way, just because of the opportunities that we're getting. Also, there are other companies that will have like a concept for a movie, and they'll go, "It's really hard to make this movie, so we'll make it as a comic first, and it'll be like a proof of concept, so that we can make this movie." But it doesn't really work well as a comic, and so that's something that we will never do. If we come up with an idea that is perfect for TV but doesn't really fit in the comic space, we just won't do the comic, because while we are working in video games and television and movies and comics, like not everything we do has to plug into every one of those, sections of the entertainment world, and maybe that's, I think I completely forgot when I was answering your transmedia question earlier, because I hate that word as much as everyone.
Right.
I think that's probably the difference. Another company might say, "Oh, we've got all these different avenues, and we have to make this work."
Right.
We're just trying to make the best stuff possible.
It's funny though when you look at it, and I don't know your perspective. I think there are a lot of creators who would say...
Like we're not doing an Air comic, for
Right,
instance.
right.
You know?
I think there are a lot of creators who would say that not every property is a good fit for different forms. Gaming is, I think, a really specific sort of example because there are a lot of games that I think people don't think can make the leap to movie because of all those terrible examples we have, or to TV, and that a lot of properties...
The Doom movie was really good.
Sure. But so do you think that, do you believe in that, or are you someone who believes that any story could become any of these things? Or do you feel like there's some stories that like that has to be a video game?
I mean, I think that there's certain, there are certain out-of-the-box ways of thinking that I think people don't necessarily do. So I think that there are games where people are like, that could never be turned into a movie, but they just haven't thought of the right way yet. But I would say that there are definitely some things that can't translate. I think that, I'm not going to box myself in by saying, something I've done could never fit as that because we just haven't thought of it yet. But I do feel like there are certain things that should never be, like what's the Destiny movie? The beauty of Destiny is that you're building this character and you're inhabiting this world. Right. I think if we were just watching those random guys that we create talk to each other, I don't want to see that movie.
So what do you have?
Cool helmet, bro. I couldn't get those boots. I worked really hard.
This gun auto-loads.
Yeah.
It generates its own ammo. Do you...
That's not fair. You have a sniper rifle that spawns its own ammo.
Do you think that that you would ever create a game first, or do you think, or a movie first, or do you think it's always going to be comics first for you, personally?
No, I mean, we're working on things behind the scenes that are games first and TV shows first and things like that. So, I mean, as much as I love comics, there are certain limitations to that medium that other, comics don't move and there's no sound, We're never going to do a musical comic. I might do a musical video game.
That sounds like it could be interesting, actually.
You never know.
Comic.
Musical comic?
Yeah.
You're an idiot. But,
if I can make sure that...
You're going to rub the pages together to make sound?
One day it's going to happen, and you're going to call and apologize.
Put some record grooves on the pages.
So, with Walking Dead, you guys have...
Hold on, we're cracking this. If you put the record grooves, if you print it on hard enough paper...
You could hum it. You could have music bars across the bottom. It could come with a flute. The Walking Dead...
You have to buy this comic and come to this room where there's a woman at a piano.
You guys have a Walking Dead coming out based in LA TV show. That is... we were talking about this earlier. There's no set name yet. It's still...
Title to be revealed.
To be revealed. It doesn't roll off the tongue. To be revealed,
We'll
The Walking
see.
Dead. So how does that fit into the universe?
We're just going to call it Walking Dead CSI Miami.
As long as there are lots of sunglasses, I'll be okay with that.
That'd be great.
So how does that fit into the universe? And
I will say, officially, there are quite a bit of sunglasses in the Walking Dead spin-off show. It's going to be great.
You're dodging my question.
Oh, I'm not. No, go ahead. Sorry.
How does that fit into the universe? And I know you've talked a little bit. You can't talk a lot about it, but how is it going to fit into the comics and the existing show?
Well, I think it doesn't relate to the comics at all because in the comic I've always focused on one group. But from the beginning of the show existing, the one thing we've heard is, what's going on here, what's going on there.
Right.
And so the intent of the new show is to kind of expand that world a little bit and show like another corner of the United States and what's happening there. And, we have revealed that, the timeline is going to be taking place at a little bit of an earlier, time frame than the original show. So like Rick Grimes kind of woke up in a coma and was like, oh man, zombies, this is weird. And we're going to, possibly see that unfold a little bit more in the other show. But I wouldn't call it a prequel because the entirety of the show is not going to take place before our show. It will eventually hit a point where they're kind of running concurrently. And the cool thing about that is I think that, one thing that we're doing with the companion show that we try to do with everything is, it's not derivative, it's standing on its own. So you can actually like watch the new show and it's about its own characters that are doing their own thing and you can watch it by itself and get your own experience. But if you are watching both shows, there will be like little nods and little, things about like, oh, we discovered this, and oh, they discovered that in a different way in this show, and because there are a lot of things about the Walking Dead world that these characters have to like learn and figure out as far as how to get by, and there may be some things that are discovered in the companion show that haven't been discovered in the show yet. So there could be like a thing where it's like, ooh, they encountered a zombie that did this in season 4 of The Walking Dead, and now we know why that was here, And so we're gonna be doing things like that. That'll be pretty cool. But for the most part, they should be able to stand alone. And then we're gonna cross it all over an Avengers movie where they all fight Thanos.
Nice.
It's gonna be great.
Secret Wars, The Walking Dead, I think is what you should do.
I like that.
Do you feel, or are you concerned at all that as you add these properties within that universe, that you have to start worrying more about? I mean, you've got the game, which is in the same universe. You've got both TV shows. Are you worried that you're getting to a point where you don't have the space to have them be completely separate, and it's going to get too complicated to manage?
Maybe. No, I mean, not really. No, I think that the show. The video game universe is all based on the comic, so there's the comic and the video game, and I think that those timelines are so separate. So there's like region that's separating the Telltale game from the comic, and there's a bit of a time difference between them. I think that's fine, and the way that the Starbreeze game will fit into that will be pretty clear soon, and you'll see that there is some distance there.
And I'm sorry, fit into, you're saying the Telltale game in the comic?
Yeah, the Starbreeze game will also be based on the comic universe as well.
Okay. All right.
So to a certain extent, that's all in the canon, so you'll see different things. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But whatever. In the same way that like Glenn showed up in the first episode of the Telltale game, there will be elements in the Starbreeze game where you're like, oh, that's like the comic thing, that's cool. But then it'll kind of go off in its own direction. But yeah, I mean, we're keeping things separate pretty well. But I think if it gets to a point where there's like 4 or 5 Walking Dead shows, I mean, I'll be on a boat. I won't care at that point. But
an island, I think, is what you meant to say.
But no, I'll be on a boat the size of an island.
A boat.
But
so the TV shows, in some ways, do you view those as their own canon? I know they're obviously based on the comics, but they sort of.
Yeah, I mean, you could never argue that the comic and the show take place in the same universe because Rick still has a hand.
Still,
and in the comic, they're never like, where'd Daryl Dixon go?
All right, last question, and then I want to take some questions from the audience. But you had this YouTube video, where you talked about your beliefs in comic book creation.
Sure.
And I think it starts by you saying that you wanted to fix comics. A small
It's
goal.
working.
Well, that's sort of what I'm getting at. I mean, it looks like now you're taking on, maybe, you haven't said this, but TV and video games and movies. Do you think, how much of that have you achieved? And do you think it's fair to say that your goal has broadened to include all of those things?
I don't know. My goal is to not be homeless. So I think in that respect, I've succeeded. Anything after that is gravy. So I don't know. I mean, I think expanding what I said about comics to television and movies and everything, I don't know that I'm necessarily the expert in those fields to be able to figure that out, but I do think it is somewhat ridiculous that, you can create a TV show and not really have like an ownership stake in it. So I would say that long-term goal for me would be to try and get to a point where I can self-finance shows in the way that I self-finance comics and own shows the same way I own comics. And so, that's in a sense an unobtainable goal, or inobtainable. I don't know what that word is. I haven't watched Avatar in a while, and so that.
It's about to make that joke.
That joke got groans. I liked Avatar, but not going to make Avatar jokes now. But even though that's something that will probably never happen,
right.
I like to give myself something to work towards. So I think that that's probably the end goal. But in comics, I think that things are changing. I think that at Image Comics in particular, I think that nobody would have expected 8 years ago that there would be this number of amazing, groundbreaking comics coming from the absolute top creators in the field, coming out of that company. I mean, things like East of West and Trees, and I'm gonna not name a bunch of titles because then I'll get emails like, why didn't you mention my book? But there's probably 30 really important comics coming out right now that people are going to be talking about for decades, and it's all coming out of one company, you know. And I think that it's because of the creator rights deal that Image gives, and you know, Skybound is some part of that, but you know, I think that in a sense that's transforming the way comics are done, which is going to change the industry for the better for years to come.
As I continue to ask my last question, there's a microphone back over there. If anybody has any questions, you should head that way. It's interesting, I think in games, there's been this renaissance, and people say this, I've said this many times over like 10 years. I always am saying there's a renaissance. But really there is a renaissance going on right now. And I think it's driven by a lot of things, chief of which is that there have been all these new ways to get games out to people, and in doing so, people have responded by saying, yeah, actually, I don't want to just play first-person shooters. I want to play a goat simulator, or I want to play a game where I put together IKEA furniture. I'm not making that up. Both of those exist. So do you think
you get no instructions?
No instructions.
That's why it's a game.
This isn't a joke, sadly or happily. But do you think the same thing's happening in comics? I mean, why, or more? I guess the better question is why.
I think the more important thing to say there is that as video games get easier to make, you know, the technology has gotten to a point where I feel like teenagers are making video games and like putting them online. The pipeline to getting them to consumers and the technology with which to create them is very much going to a space where I was when I was making comics. Like I knew from working at a comic shop how to make a comic and how to get it into comic stores. And now video games have gotten to a point where kids that are like 19 could go, I know how to make a game and I know how to get it in front of people. And I think that because of everything happening with the internet and the way that like the transition to Hulu and Netflix and all those other kind of, you know, devices is getting things to a point where a network is basically just a website, and it's very easy to build a website. And YouTube and things like that are making it very easy for people to make shows and movies and things like that. We are kind of moving into a place where people will be able to create their own content and you know, own it all and control it all in the same way that you do in comics. So, you know, that is a huge transition that is leading to all of these like amazing indie games that are doing like crazy business and are like fun and innovative, and except for that IKEA thing.
Come on, it's great.
Jury is still out on that one.
You gotta try it.
But I like to think the guy that made that game was in the back like going, oh.
Crying.
Yeah.
All right.
It's an exciting time to be doing stuff.
And you think, do you think comics, the reason, that's what I was getting to, do you think that the reason comics are seeing this explosion of creativity and these sort of, I guess if you want to call them that, indie comics, is it because of the same sort of thing, that it's easier to get those comics out there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, that's a big part of, I think that The Walking Dead to a certain extent has kind of made people more aware. They were always aware of the possibilities of doing creator-owned comics, but I think that having The Walking Dead out there and having my dumb face on Conan O'Brien and all these weird things that have happened to me kind of makes people a little bit more aware of how easy it is. I mean, honestly, I am a moron. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think that, you know, someone like Brian K. Vaughan is like infinitely more intelligent than me. So I think the future for something like Saga can dwarf what I've done with The Walking Dead.
All right, we have a line back there. Go ahead.
Great
question.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Robert. I have two quick questions. One, kind of the business side. So how do you juggle your creative work? So you're writing Invincible, you're writing Outcast, you're writing Walking Dead, and then doing TV, you're doing games, you're managing all these different things. I'd like to know, how do you balance your day between the creative and the business? And the second, kind of more geeky question, I see, you know, The Walking Dead has its different, you know, verticals in the different areas you're working in. What do you think of how Marvel works their entertainment compared to DC in terms of like Marvel's trying to keep it all unified and DC's kind of spraying it all out? How do you think those things work?
Well, they both suck, but I'll go back and answer your first question. I don't know. I mean, I've been writing comics for so long that it's like you know, it's like a fun, you know, it's like going out in my backyard and flying a kite. Like, it's like, oh, I get to write comics now. So, you know, I try to do like a block in the morning where I get most of the comic stuff that I need done. And then throughout the day, I can kind of pop in and, you know, write a few pages of this or block out a couple of scenes of that. And I think the fact that I've been doing it for so long makes it possible for me to kind of, do the comics while I'm, taking meetings and doing all this other stuff. So like when I'm in the writer's room on a various show, like I try to make sure I get the comics work I need to get done before I go into the room. I think that the tremendous benefit, is anyone recording this? People in Hollywood are lazy. So like writers' rooms oftentimes don't start till like 11. So I can work from like 7 a.m. to 11 on a comic and then go in at 11 and everybody's like, ooh, time to start my day, get me some coffee. And I'm like, you guys are the worst. So that makes it possible, I guess.
I am recording it just now.
Whatever. I'm gonna get in trouble. But as far as like, you want me to critique how Marvel's doing and how DC's doing? All right. I think that anyone would be foolish to say that Marvel hasn't done something extremely special. I think that the fact that Iron Man ended with a surprise cameo of Samuel L. Jackson. I like how I said his name. It was like one like sound.
One word. Yeah.
Samuel Jackson. Whatever. Samuel L. Jackson. It always annoys me when you see like EPK stuff on DVDs where they're like talking about the actors and people are like, Sam Jackson this and Sam Jackson that.
They're buddies.
Yeah, it's just like, why isn't he just called Sam Jackson? Whatever. Anyway, I'm losing everybody. So I think that the thing that people forget about the Marvel stuff is that all of that was a surprise. Like, Iron Man was amazing, and at the end of that movie, you were like, what? How did that happen? I think he said the word Avengers. What? And like, everything that came out of that was very organic and also very exciting. I think that announcing that you're going to do a Justice League movie, after a Superman movie, that was like neat and had some awesome things in it, but wasn't like amazing or groundbreaking. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, it was an awesome movie. I liked it, but I think that it seems derivative, which I think puts them in a backseat position to Marvel, but also like it's not organic, and so there's going to be so much scrutiny on Batman versus Superman when it comes out that it's got an uphill battle, which if they hadn't told anybody that the Justice League was going to be appearing in that, or that they would be forming the Justice League and that there was a Justice League plan, it would have been surprising and exciting and weird. And I think that, if I go to a movie and I see something like weird and unexpected, like I didn't, like, if they actually work this thing out and Spider-Man shows up in the Captain America movie, like if they hadn't told me that, like that'd be like the most exciting, weirdest thing in the world. But I think that, people are forgetting how important the surprises are in the grand scheme of these things. But, Aquaman looks awesome, and I'm sure that movie's gonna be great.
Great, thank you.
The next question.
Hi there, my name is Kristen, and I have two quick questions for you.
Would you like me to critique Paramount's slate of upcoming movies, or is there any other?
Exactly. Do you ever take characters that you create just for the TV shows, and will you ever, or do you ever want to insert them into the comics, such as the Dixon brothers? And second, will you take a selfie with me to make my sisters super jealous?
I don't know your sisters or care how they feel, so no. But
I'll let her know you said that.
See me after class. But as far as the Dixon brothers go and everything, there are certain like legal hurdles to the way that TV shows are done and all the legalities, and like if I were to want to put Daryl Dixon in the comic, like there's contracts that have to be done with the Crossbow Company and Norman Reedus himself, and all these things that would make it boring for me. I don't know, but aside from all those hurdles, I think that it's very important that there are things that are unique to all the various different Walking Dead iterations. So while it would be cool to see Clementine show up in the comic, I think that would, to a certain extent, steal the coolness away from the Telltale games. And so I think that, if you can only get Clementine from the games and you can only get Daryl Dixon from the show, that adds to those like versions and makes it cooler. Plus, we don't need Daryl Dixon in the comic. I mean, come on.
It's already cool.
All right.
Hi, I'm a big fan. I actually made this Walking Dead dress just for today, but I do have a gaming question.
Here, right down here. Come on, let's do it real quick.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Hold on.
You can...
Go ahead. No more.
Well, I was saying I made this dress just for today. It's a Walking Dead fabric, but I have a gaming question. The games that have come out so far are...
Do we make a Walking Dead fabric?
Yes.
We really do?
There's 3 prints. There's actually one with Michonne in the comic strip.
Guys, big announcement. We got some Walking Dead fabrics coming out. They're so awesome. Please go to a fabric store. I think I remember that being mentioned to me in passing. Your dress sounds awesome.
Thank you. My question is for gaming. The games that have come out are not online interactive. Is there any plans in the pipeline for making any of them online interactive so that you can do like co-op with other people?
I think it's pretty safe to say that the Starbreeze game will be online interactive. I think, I don't know, maybe it's not, but it is, and I just said it, so.
Will it be, just to follow up on her question,
Yes.
will it be cooperative then, or will it?
Payday is an online cooperative game, correct?
Yes, it is.
So yeah, it'll follow a similar. I hope I don't get any calls after this, but yeah,
Okay, thank you.
it's good news. I answered a question for real, and she got the answer that we wanted, and everybody's like solemn. You guys are worried I'm going to get in trouble? I'll be fine.
I was wondering if you could expand on the Thief of Thieves property and whether it's still on track to going to TV and anything else you might be doing with it.
We actually have a lot of really exciting stuff happening behind the scenes on Thief of Thieves, which sounds like I'm vamping, but is true. I can't talk about any of it, but there's very real possibilities that you might see a Thief of Thieves TV show or a Thief of Thieves game or both at some point in the next, I don't know, let's say 10 years to be safe. I don't know, these things take time. But we were very close to making Thief of Thieves at AMC, but they ended up with like 4 crime shows at the same time, so it kind of got backburnered. But it's looking like things are in the works, I guess. I don't want to say too much. I'm just playing it fast and loose after that Starbreeze answer. I don't want to get in too much trouble. But if you're a fan of Thief of Thieves, there's a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline that looks very real and should be announced very soon.
Thank you.
We're doing a Thief of Thieves theme park.
Nice.
You go in and people steal things from you.
I think that's called Disney.
Howdy, name's Raul. I will try not to make my questions and comments spoilerly. So has there been anything in the Walking Dead comic that you really wanted to do, like maybe like tigers or anything like that, that you couldn't do in the show or people said, don't do? And then to add something about you talking about surprises, the comic 138, 139, I'm always surprised with the stuff you do with Carl. Awesome character.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I like Carl. Lots of cool stuff coming up for Carl in the show. Crap, what was the answer before? I had it.
It was like anything in the comics that you wanted to do, but they...
Oh yeah, the tiger
down
thing.
the show. Tiger.
Yeah, so later on in the comic, if you guys aren't caught up or aren't reading it because you just like the show, jerks. There's like a guy that has a tiger for a pet in the comic named Ezekiel, who's really cool. And I always say I never let the show influence what I'm doing in the comic, but I will say when I was writing those characters in the comic, I was like, yeah, good luck doing this, show people. So that's a lot of fun. But I think that we'll be able to do the tiger. I don't know, we'll see. But it's not something I really think about. I just want to do something cool comic-wise, and I'm like, it'd be awesome if there was a guy who had a pet tiger.
It's pretty awesome.
Seeing a tiger like eating zombies and stuff. And I swear it makes sense and it's not weird at all. I think we could do a tiger on the show. I mean, Game of Thrones has got people fighting bears in arenas, so, I think we can do some tiger stuff. Oh, I'm
You're
sorry.
cross-show spoilering now.
Now when that bear shows up, I'm not going to be surprised. What a jerk.
Thanks, I'm looking forward to the tigers then.
Great. I like how he was like, I've had enough answer. Please stop talking. I'm not going to sit down. I like that.
We've actually run out of time.
What?
I know.
Screw it. Ask your question.
Last question.
So the impression I've always gotten from you, from all the things that you work on, is that you enjoy doing them, but that comics is the thing that you enjoy doing the most.
And look, it's like a 90-85 thing. It's not like I hate working in other mediums, but yeah.
What is it about comics, quickly, if you can quickly, that makes it that extra 10%?
Comics are a medium that is dependent on an individual's, people, the same 10 people can read a comic and get a different experience out of it. I think that that's awesome. I think that because the pacing and so many, like the inflection on dialogue and all this kind of stuff is based on you. I think that it's like a cooler audience, you know, like somebody that really like reads a comic and gets a comic, like you have like a relationship with the author. So it's almost like you can sit down and read the same comic in 2 minutes or in 20 minutes, depending on how long you take with it. And I think that that freedom for an audience member to be able to kind of control their experience, you know, like is really awesome and unique. I think that Sin City is a very good example of that. I'll riff for 2 minutes and then we'll all leave. I read the Sin City comics and I was like, this is the coolest, edgiest, grittiest, like somewhat realistic noir story. Like Frank Miller's art was very dynamic and entertaining and bombastic and all kinds of other ridiculous words. But I read it as a very grounded, realistic story. Robert Rodriguez did not. He was like, it'll be like guys jumping off of buildings and crazy things will happen and people get hit with cars and everything will look weird. And so I think that that's a really good example of how people can like see things in a completely different way. Those Sin City movies are a really good example of a huge comic fan who absolutely loves a comic portraying how he saw that comic. And I think if you sit down and read the Sin City comics, you can see like, you might see those scenes play out in a different way. And you might like read them at a different speed and get a different thing out of them. And I think that's the coolest thing about comics.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Watch the show, buy the comics.
Awesome.
And we're sourcing the ladies that will come to our academy in 2 avenues. First of all, through other companies that would like to take our program and have us train their ladies, or through the Ministry of Labor and the Human Resources Development Fund. We'll be working with ladies that then don't have jobs. And what we would do is work with almost like preferred vendors and do on-the-job training where they've got 2 days in our academy and 3 days on the job.